She was scheduled for execution, but the human guard who hated her race set her free. Death was supposed to be waiting for her, a condemned Elari prisoner sentenced to execution for treason. But instead of dying, she wakes up. And the human guard who once hated her people, he's the one saving her. Why? Because of a horrifying secret he uncovered. In just 5 days, the Elari will be wiped out. All of them. Now, the only person who can stop the genocide is her enemy. So the question is, when the one trying to save your people is the one who once wanted them gone, can you trust him? A blinding white light burned into Virella's eyes as she came to. Cold metal straps pinned her body to the execution table, a feeling all too familiar to a prisoner of war like her. She didn't resist. What would be the point? There was nothing left to fight for. Around her, human alliance guards stood in rigid formation, dressed in pitch-black uniforms. Their faces were blank, emotionless, like executing an Elari was just another task on their daily checklist. Above her, a large holographic screen blinked with bold red letters. Treason, execution authorized under Clause 7B. Virella let out a bitter smile. Treason? How do you betray a union you never chose to belong to? One of the guards stood out from the rest. Taller, broader, and in his icy blue eyes she saw something different. Not pity. She didn't need pity from humans. No, it was something she couldn't name. His name was Ethan Ward, commander of today's firing squad. Begin the sequence, Ethan ordered, his voice cold and steady. Virella shut her eyes. She didn't want her final sight to be of the enemy. Her mind drifted to home, to Elari, to the silver fields under the light of 3 suns, to her little brother lost in a refugee camp. At least, she'd be seeing him soon. The machine hummed to life. She drew in one final breath. This was the end, but death never came. Instead, a chill shot down her spine. And then, darkness. When she opened her eyes again, everything was different. The light was softer, the air warmer. She was lying on a simple medical cot in a small room, and standing in front of her, still dressed in that black uniform, was Ethan Ward. "You're safe," he said, his voice no longer cold. "I forged the execution order." Virella struggled to sit up, her thoughts spinning around one impossible question. Why would a human save an Elari? Like a wounded animal, Virella sprang up from the bed with a feral growl. Her nails, blunted in prison to prevent suicide attempts, were still sharp enough to scratch skin if she got close. But her body betrayed her. Weeks of captivity and torture had left her too weak. Her knees buckled the moment she stood. Ethan was faster. He caught her before she hit the floor. Virella thrashed instinctively, but he didn't fight back. He just eased her gently back onto the bed. "You need rest," he said calmly, his voice low and steady. "They sedated you before the execution. It'll be a few more hours before your system recovers." "Why?" she hissed, her silver violet eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Why would a human save an Elari? Especially you?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved to the door, checked the security lock, then pulled a chair up beside her bed. Not too close, but close enough that she could hear every word. "I used to be Special Forces," he began. "Human Alliance, Sigma 7, Black Ops, missions the public never hears about." His eyes flicked to the scars on her wrists, left behind by interrogations. "I believed in the mission. I believed in the Alliance, until I found files on a classified project." Virella stared, saying nothing. "They called it Project Ashfall," he said, "a systematic plan to wipe out the entire Elari species." Silence. A cold chill crept up her spine. If this was true, no, it couldn't be. It had to be a lie. "You think I'll believe you?" She scoffed, her voice trembling despite the venom in her tone. "Your kind has slaughtered millions of us, driven us off our homeworld, locked us in refugee camps like animals. And now you want me to believe you suddenly grew a conscience?" Ethan stood, walked over to a control panel in the corner, and tapped in a long access code. "I'm not asking you to believe in my conscience," he said without turning around. "I'm asking you to believe the evidence." A hologram flickered to life, maps, charts, genetic sequencing unique to Elari biology, and stamped across the top, in bold red letters, Project Ashfall, classified level Omega. Virella stared at the screen, her body still, but her eyes were racing, scanning every line of data. Elari eyes, those rare silver-violet irises, could process information 3 times faster than the average human. That ability had once made her people formidable warriors and brilliant strategists. Now it helped her absorb the nightmare unfolding in front of her. "Project Ashfall," Ethan said, his voice distant, almost echoing. "A satellite designed to disperse a gene-targeted virus. This virus attacks a specific DNA sequence, one that only exists in the Elari genome." On screen, a slow-rotating model of the satellite appeared. It looked like a standard weather device, but inside it was a weapon of extinction. Once deployed, the virus spreads through air, water, skin contact. At first, the symptoms mimic a mild flu, fever, cough, fatigue, but within 72 hours, Ethan's voice dropped. The organs begin to fail. By day 5, fatality rate hits 99.7%. Virella felt her throat tighten. She'd seen too much death in her life, lost too many friends, too much family. But this level of cruelty was unimaginable. "Why?" she whispered, barely audible. "The war's over. We signed the surrender accords. We're in the camps. We followed your terms." Ethan swiped the display, bringing up a map. "This is the target for the first test." He zoomed in. A red-marked zone pulsed on screen. Elari Refugee Camp 9. Over 50,000 Elari live there, mostly women and children. "In 5 days," he continued, "they'll launch the first satellite. It'll activate over the camp as a field test before global deployment." Virella's blood turned to ice. "Camp 9, she whispered, her voice shaking. "My brother's there." Suddenly, something else on the screen caught her eye. "Wait," she said quickly, pointing to a block of code in the corner. "That's not the Council's digital signature. I know their authorization patterns." Ethan nodded, a bitter smile ghosting across his face. "Exactly. This didn't come from the Alliance Council. It's a rogue faction, operating from the inside. They call themselves the Purifiers," he said grimly, "a militarized extremist cell. They believe peace with the Elari is impossible, that the only way to guarantee humanity's survival is to erase your species completely." He powered down the screen and looked her in the eye. "I'm no hero. I've done things in this war I'll never forgive myself for. Things I can't undo. But genocide," his voice hardened, "I won't be a part of that." Virella stared at the empty space where the hologram had vanished. Could she trust him? A human? Her enemy? Or was this just another elaborate trap? But if he was telling the truth, she had no choice. Finally, she spoke, her voice cool, sharp, and steady once more. "Then tell me," she said, "what's your plan?" "My plan," Ethan said, sliding open a hidden drawer beneath the control console, "is to keep you alive long enough for us to stop Project Ashfall." He pulled out 2 fake IDs and a small pouch filled with bright blue pills. "We need to get out of here within the hour. Once the system flags the forged execution order, they'll send a response team, and they won't come alone." Virella eyed the pills in his hand. "What are those?" "Temporary DNA mutators. They'll rewrite your biosignature for 48 hours, long enough to pass biometric scans. You'll still be a Elari, but the scanners won't recognize it." She hesitated, then took one. They both knew she didn't really have a choice. "What's my name now?" "Lyra Novak, Tier 3 MedTech, and I'm Marcus Reed, Tier 2 Security Officer. We're a bonded couple en route to Apollo Station for reassignment." She swallowed the pill with a gulp of water. Pain ripped through her body like fire in her veins. And just like that, her signature Elari skin, faintly glowing lavender, began to fade into a soft human tone. "At least I won't need gloves anymore," she muttered, watching her fingers shift from violet to pale pink. 12 hours later, they had cleared 3 checkpoints and made it to Lower Haven, a neutral planet skirting the edge of the Chaos Belt. It was a haven for criminals, deserters, and the undocumented. Here, money mattered more than loyalty. Questions were a luxury no one could afford. Ethan led her to a rundown high-rise on level 47, a slum where sunlight never reached, and the air stank of mold and spoiled food. "This'll be home for now," he said as they stepped into a cramped apartment, barely big enough for a bed and a control terminal. "No one's gonna find us here." Virella didn't respond. She was staring out a grime-covered window, watching Alliance patrol ships sweep across the sky in the distance. "I need to contact the Elari underground," she said finally. "If what you're saying is true, they have to know." Ethan hesitated. "You trust them? How do you know the Alliance hasn't planted spies among them?" "I trust them more than I trust you," she shot back. 3 days later, after tense negotiations through encrypted channels, they were led by an Elari contact deep into the abandoned mining tunnels beneath Lower Haven. It had once been a place for extracting minerals. Now it was a sanctuary for the exiled. They moved through narrow corridors lit by flickering overhead lamps. The air was thick with damp earth and rusted metal. Ethan kept one hand near the weapon at his side, not out of aggression, but out of habit. They turned a corner, and a sudden sound froze them in place. From the shadows, a small Elari child, no more than 4 years old, ran out. Its wide violet eyes locked onto Ethan's face. Fear, confusion, recognition. Then came the heavy footfalls, Alliance patrol, sweeping through for a routine search. Without hesitation, Ethan scooped up the child, pulling it into a dark alcove. He wrapped his coat over its head, hiding the glowing skin, the telltale eyes. He cradled the kid tightly, positioning his body as a shield. Virella stood frozen, stunned. She watched this man, her enemy, shield a child he should have seen as a threat. And when the patrol's flashlights swept past, catching Ethan's tense expression, when she saw how he held the child like it was the most important thing in the world, something inside her cracked. That wasn't the move of a liar, not of a soldier following orders, not of an enemy. When the patrol finally moved on, Ethan slowly released the child. It looked up at him for a long, curious moment, then darted off into the shadows. "Why'd you do that?" Virella asked quietly. Ethan shrugged like it was nothing. "It's just a kid." She didn't respond. But as they walked deeper into the tunnels, the space between them felt a little smaller. And when she looked at him again, her eyes no longer held the same cold distrust. The Elari Resistance's war room lay buried deep beneath the planet's surface, shielded by layers of sensors and automated defenses. Soft blue light glowed from native crystal formations embedded in the walls, a subtle way for the exiles to stay connected to the home they'd lost. The moment Virella stepped inside, she felt the tension spike. 12 Elari warriors stood waiting, fully armed and visibly hostile the moment they saw Ethan. But it was the one in the center who commanded attention. A tall Elari, his left cheek marked by jagged war scars that darkened his violet skin like shadows burned into flesh. "Lyrics," Virella whispered. Her body instinctively straightened into a soldier's stance. She hadn't worn a uniform in years, but the reflexes remained. Lyrics, highest-ranking Elari Resistance commander still alive, met her eyes with a flicker of warmth, then turned cold as steel when he looked at Ethan. "Virella of Clan Moonshadow," Lyric said, voice low and firm. "We thought you fell during the assault on Delta Base." "I was captured," Virella replied, "and I would have been executed if it weren't for the human," Lyrics cut in, eyes locked on Ethan. "What I don't understand is why a Sigma agent would do this. Men like him don't just wake up one day with a conscience." Before Ethan could answer, Lyrics drew a small sidearm and aimed it straight at Ethan's forehead. The room froze. "Your squad wiped out 3 of our refugee camps during the war," Lyrics said coldly. "I watched my friends get skinned alive for intel, and now you want me to trust you?" Ethan didn't flinch, didn't reach for a weapon, didn't even blink. "I'm not asking for your trust," he said. "I'm asking you to verify the intel I brought. Project Ashfall is real, and it starts with Refugee Camp 9 in 3 days." Lyric's finger tightened on the trigger. 3 camps, over 200,000 lives. "Why shouldn't I kill you right here?" "Because it won't change anything," Virella said sharply, stepping between them. "And because without him, we'd still be in the dark about Ashfall." Silence swallowed the room. All eyes turned to Virella, an Elari soldier standing in a defense of a human, an enemy. "You know who I am, Lyrics," she continued. Her voice was steady, unshaken. "You know what I've lost in this war. My brother is in Camp 9. You think I'd ally with the enemy unless it was the only way?" Lyrics studied her for a long, hard moment, then slowly lowered his weapon. But his gaze never left Ethan. "Show me your evidence," he said at last. Over the next 30 minutes, Ethan laid out everything: maps, genetic data, deployment schedules, names of key purity order operatives. The room was quiet, heavy with disbelief, fury, and realization. When he finished, Lyrics exchanged a look with his senior advisors. "We'll need to verify this," he said. "If it's true, we'll begin evacuating Camp 9 immediately." "There's no time," Ethan shook his head. "And if we start pulling people out, the purity order will notice. They'll either accelerate the launch or change targets. We need to cut this off at the source." "And what do you suggest?" Lyrics asked, still wary. "We infiltrate the Alliance military data center at Tram Station," Ethan replied. "If we get into their systems, we can expose Ashfall. We get irrefutable proof, enough to force the Council to act." Lyrics gave a short, bitter laugh. "And you think the Council cares about the fate of the Elari?" "Not all of them," Ethan admitted, "but enough. Enough to spark an investigation, enough to stall the project." A thick silence settled again as Lyrics weighed the options. Finally, he gave his answer. "Fine, we'll help you get into the data center, but there's one condition." "What condition?" Ethan asked. Lyrics' eyes sharpened. "You go with the infiltration team. You face the danger firsthand. Prove your loyalty with your life." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Fair enough. And if this is a trap," Lyrics added, "you'll be the first to die." Virella watched him closely, waiting for any sign of fear or doubt. There was none, only resolve. "When do we move?" Ethan asked, calm and ready. The outskirts of Tram Station were blanketed in synthetic fog, an Alliance security measure designed to scramble long-range surveillance. Hidden in the haze, Ethan and Virella moved silently along the southern wall of the military data center, dressed in plain black uniforms used by facility maintenance crews. Simple, effective, perfect for infiltration. "Motion sensors everywhere," Ethan whispered, scanning the alley before leading her into the shadows. But during monthly maintenance cycles, they shut down Section B7 for exactly 4 minutes to recalibrate the sensors. Virella checked the timer on her wrist. 2 minutes. Ethan nodded. "Once we're in, we've got 30 seconds to reach the central server and 2 minutes to extract the data. After that, we run," Virella finished, gripping her weapon tightly. It wasn't a standard Alliance plasma rifle. It was a non-lethal, designed to disable, not kill. Ethan's decision, one that surprised her. He glanced at her, concern flickering in his eyes. "You're still recovering. If anything goes wrong, I don't need you worrying about me," she snapped, her voice cool and sharp. But there was something in the way he looked at her. Not pity, respect. "I've been fighting since I was a kid. I'll be fine." The moment the defenses dropped, they slipped inside Section B7. The corridor stretched out like a steel labyrinth, towering server stacks blinking with endless rows of blue LEDs, casting an eerie, oceanic glow. "This way," Ethan said, leading with the precision of someone who knew every corner of this base. Virella wasn't surprised. He was Sigma, elite, trained to memorize every inch of Alliance infrastructure. They reached the central server, a monolith of cables, lights, and blinking status bars that reached all the way to the ceiling. "Watch the door," Ethan instructed, attaching the data extraction device to the main terminal. I need exactly 90 seconds. Virella took position, senses on full alert. Her Elari hearing picked up everything. The soft echo of patrol boots 2 floors above, the hum of ventilation fans, and Ethan's heartbeat pounding steadily as he cracked the encryption. "I'm in," he said under his breath, focused. "Downloading Project Ashfall. Authorization code. Got it. It's real. And it's in its final phase." Just then, Virella's ears twitched. "Someone's coming," she said quickly. 3, armed, North Corridor." "I need 30 more seconds," Ethan replied, still typing. "You've got 30, she said, slipping into the shadows near the source of the sound. 3 Alliance soldiers appeared down the hallway, moving in a tight triangle formation. This wasn't routine patrol. They were searching for something. She signaled Ethan. He nodded without breaking rhythm. Virella ran through her options. A distraction, a misdirection, something to draw them away from Ethan. But her thoughts were cut off when the lead soldier spoke. "Security breach in Sector B7. Continue with Alpha Sweep." Ethan froze. The voice, he knew that voice. He turned slowly, disbelief washing over his face. Virella noticed the change in his posture. His entire body tensed. The patrol leader stepped into view under the flashing lights. A man about Ethan's age, with a scar running from his temple to his chin. "Chris?" Ethan whispered, stunned, forgetting for a moment how much danger they were in. The soldier stopped, his eyes locked on Ethan. "Ethan Ward," he said, voice calm. "I heard you'd gone rogue. Didn't expect to find you here." "Chris, listen to me." Ethan stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "Project Ashfall isn't an Alliance directive. It's a conspiracy." Chris smirked, but there was no warmth in it. "I know, Ethan. I'm part of it." Virella watched in disbelief. These two knew each other, deeply. This wasn't just a former comrade, this was something more. "You can't stand by this," Ethan said, voice tightening. "We fought side by side. We swore to protect all life." "And I am," Chris replied, aiming his weapon at Ethan's chest. "Human life. The Elari are too strong, too dangerous. You knew that once. You believed it." The soldiers began spreading out, closing in on Ethan. None of them noticed the silent shadow moving behind them. "I used to believe it," Ethan said quietly. "But that was fear talking, not truth. What the Purity Order is doing, it's genocide, Chris. It's a war crime." Chris's face hardened. "It's survival, and I'm sorry, old friend, but I've got orders to bring in all deserters, no exceptions." Just as Chris was about to give the command, Virella struck, silent, lethal, precise. One guard dropped instantly, a blow to the neck. The second turned too late. She disarmed him with a swift kick, followed by a strike to the ribs that dropped him cold. Chris spun at the sound, but it was already too late. Ethan surged forward, not to attack, but to shove Chris aside and make a break for the exit. "Move!" he shouted. Virella followed without hesitation, until she heard it, the hum of a plasma rifle powering up behind her. "Ethan, down!" Ethan dropped just in time as the plasma blast cut through the air. Virella returned fire, her non-lethal round striking Chris in the shoulder, sending him to the floor unconscious. "Let's go!" she yelled, grabbing Ethan and dragging him to his feet. They sprinted through the corridors as alarms erupted all around them. Ethan led them through an emergency hatch few even knew existed. Minutes later, they vanished into the crowded streets. In an abandoned building, blocks away, they were safe. For now. "You saved my life," Ethan said softly. Virella didn't look at him. "We needed that data. I protected the mission." "Still," he said, "thank you." Silence hung between them, until Virella finally asked, "Who was he?" Ethan sighed, eyes distant. "Christopher Reeves, my best friend for over a decade. We went through everything together. Basic training, black ops, near-death missions. I saved his life 3 times. And now he's part of the Purity Order," Virella said quietly. "Yeah," Ethan nodded, pain deep in his voice. "War changes people. Fear changes people. And sometimes, you don't recognize the person you once called brother." Virella said nothing, but something inside her shifted. For the first time, Ethan wasn't just a human, not just the enemy. He was a man with losses of his own, with pain and conviction. "We have what we need," she said at last. "Ashfall is real, and now we have proof." "And we know exactly what to do next," Ethan replied, a new fire burning in his voice. The Elari resistance base buzzed with a tension unlike anything before. Fighters moved quickly, hauling weapons and gear with the precision of those who knew. This could be the most important mission in their history. At the center of it all stood Lyrix, facing a holographic map of the Stellaris Weapons Research Center, the site where the Ashfall satellite was being finalized before launch. "The facility has 3 layers of defense," Lyrix said, his voice echoing through the war room. "Outer perimeter lasers, armed patrols around the clock, and automated defenses inside." Ethan stepped forward, pointing to a section on the map. "There's a blind spot here, an old ventilation shaft from back when the site was a mining outpost. It's not on official schematics, but I know it's there." Virella studied him carefully. Since the incident with Chris, something had shifted. Not trust, not yet, but something deeper. A shared understanding born of pain, betrayal, and the burden of doing what's right. "We'll split into 3 teams, Lyrix instructed. Team 1 creates a diversion at the main gate. Team 2 disables the security sensors by taking down the power grid. Team 3, the strike team, goes in through the vent shaft." "I'll lead the strike team," Ethan said without hesitation. Lyrix studied him, then gave a slow nod. "Virella, you're with him. Make sure everything goes to plan." "And once we're inside," Virella asked. "We have 3 objectives," Ethan said, pulling up another hologram. 1. Destroy the Ashfall satellite being prepped in the testing chamber. 2. Extract all data from the central server, evidence for the Council. 3. Wipe every virus sample from the biolab. We can't leave anything they could use to rebuild this weapon. The satellite's micro-reactor will be enough to level most of the facility, Lyrix added. "All we have to do is trigger it and run." For hours, they fine-tuned the plan, every detail scrutinized, every escape route calculated. When the meeting ended, the team scattered to make final preparations for the night ahead. Virella found Ethan alone in a quiet corner of the base, checking his infiltration gear. In the dim light, his face looked worn, but resolute. "You don't have to lead the strike team," she said softly. There was no accusation in her voice, just clarity. "It's the most dangerous part of the mission." Ethan didn't look up. "I know the Stellaris Center better than anyone, and I'm the most responsible for all of this." "Responsible?" she echoed, leaning against the wall. He finally looked up, and in his eyes, Virella saw something she hadn't expected. Grief, raw and deep. "I used to hate the Elari," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "My sister Lily was killed in the attack on Nexus 7. She was 19, a botanist, not a soldier, just a girl who loved plants." Virella stayed silent, her throat tightening. "When I found out she was gone, I joined Sigma, and I swore I'd kill as many Elari as I could." He paused, the weight of it all pressing down like gravity. "For 5 years, I did things I can't even say out loud, and I told myself it was justice, that I was avenging her. But then, I started seeing the truth, how the Alliance treated Elari prisoners, how families were torn apart, how children were locked away like animals, and I began to wonder, what would Lily think of the man I'd become?" Silence stretched between them. Virella could see his hands shaking. "Then I found Project Ashfall," he continued, "and I knew. I couldn't be part of this anymore. I couldn't keep hating. I finally understood who the real enemy was." A chill ran down Virella's spine. She'd heard stories like this, from her side. Elari who'd lost everything, who swore revenge on humanity, who later realized that hate only ever bred more hate. "I had a brother," she said softly, her voice gentler than he'd ever heard it. "Taryn. He was 14 when we were separated during the evacuation. I volunteered to stay and fight. He was sent to Refugee Camp 9, the place they said was safest. Ethan listened, silent. But it wasn't safe, she went on, eyes distant. There wasn't enough food. Disease spread fast. And the guards, some treated us like we weren't even people. She turned to face him. I don't know if Taran's alive, but if he is, he's in Camp 9, the first target of Ashfall. Her voice trembled just once, then steadied again. If we make it out of this, she said, I'll tell you about him. How he could make plants bloom just by touching them. How he used to dream of a world where Elari and humans live side by side. A faint smile crossed Ethan's face. He sounds like Lily. She believed in peace too. They stood there, wrapped in a silence that wasn't awkward, but full of weight, of mutual scars. We'll find him, Ethan said finally. After we stop Ashfall, we'll find Taran. Virella didn't respond right away, but when she did, her voice had changed. No longer cold, no longer guarded. Promise me something, Ethan. Anything. Promise me you'll make it out of this alive. I don't want to tell Taran's story to a corpse. For the first time since they met, Ethan smiled, genuinely. Only if you promise the same, she nodded. It wasn't an oath between soldiers. It wasn't between enemies. It was something else entirely. And outside, as the resistance prepared for battle, in this quiet corner of a crumbling world, for a moment, there was peace, buzz. The night sky over Stellaris was pitch black, soaked in rain and shrouded in heavy storm clouds, as if even the stars wanted to hide from what was about to unfold. Rain hammered the metal roof of the Weapons Research Center, masking the sound of bootsteps and anxious breaths. Ethan led the way, slipping through a forgotten maintenance vent. Behind him moved Virella and 4 elite Elari operatives, all clad in sleek black suits, armed with silent weapons and advanced breach tools. No one spoke. They'd rehearsed this plan dozens of times in the past 24 hours. Everyone knew their role. 2 minutes to breach point, Ethan whispered into his comms. Team 1, report. Standing by at the main gate, Lyrix's voice crackled in, awaiting signal. Team 2, in position at the power station, ready to cut. As they approached the entry shaft, a silence fell over them. Not the calm kind, but the kind before a storm. This wasn't just another mission. It was everything or nothing. Their last chance to stop genocide. 30 seconds, Virella said, glancing at her wrist display. Ethan gave her a quick look. In that moment, they didn't need words. They both knew. This could be the last time they ever saw each other alive. Execute, Ethan commanded. A split second later, a controlled explosion echoed from the front gate. Team 1's diversion had begun. The lights throughout the base flickered, then died, replaced by a red emergency glow. Team 2 had done their part. Move, Ethan ordered. They slipped in through the vent, disabling 2 confused guards with swift, silent strikes. Virella took point, gliding through the dark like a shadow. Her violet Elari eyes glowed faintly. Biological night vision, nearly perfect in the blackout. Test chambers to the right, Ethan said close behind. Server rooms upstairs. Split up, Virella commanded. 2 to the server, 2 to the biolab. Ethan and I take the test chamber, neutralize the satellite. The others nodded and peeled off into the darkness. Virella and Ethan pushed deeper into the base, evading confused patrols rushing toward the main gate. They reached the test chamber, a massive high-ceiling room. And there it was, in the center, Ashfall, a satellite that looked ordinary, but carried the power to erase an entire species. I'm accessing the control system, Ethan said, rushing to the terminal. You watch the door. Virella kept her stance tight, scanning every angle. Something felt off, too easy, too smooth. I'm overriding the fail-safes, Ethan muttered, fingers flying across the keys. Programming a core overload. Once it's set, we've got 10 minutes to evacuate. Then gunfire. Virella spun, weapon ready. Faster, she snapped. Almost there, Ethan said, focused. Their comms crackled to life. We've got the data, but we're pinned down in the server room. Need backup. Ethan hit the final key. Done! Reactors set to detonate in 10. We need to move. They turned toward the exit, and the doors burst open. A squad of Alliance soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. Leading them was a tall, silver-haired man in a pristine white uniform. General Harmon. Ethan froze. His face went pale. Harmon, he breathed. Ward, the general said calmly. You were a brilliant officer. A shame you chose the wrong side. But his eyes didn't stay on Ethan. They shifted to Virella. Recognition flickered. Prisoner 773B. I signed your execution order 2 weeks ago. Looks like I'll have to finish the job myself. Virella's blood ran cold. He was the one who tried to erase her. Now he stood revealed as the leader of the Purity Order. You won't escape, Harmon said. The facility's on lockdown. Your Elari friends are captured or dead. In Ashfall, it will launch on schedule no matter what you've done here. Ethan and Virella locked eyes. If he was right, they'd failed. But they had one card left, the countdown. Why? Virella asked, stalling for time. Why genocide? The war is over. We surrendered. Harmon tilted his head, the mask of ice faltering just for a moment. It's not hatred, he said quietly. I admire your people. You're strong, brilliant, too strong, too different. Peace between us is a lie. And in a world like this, only one species gets to survive. Virella's rage boiled. So you choose to murder millions of innocents? I choose humanity, Harmon replied. And now you die with your fantasy of stopping the inevitable. He raised his hand. Soldiers stepped forward. But before they could fire, boom! A massive blast rocked the corridor behind them. Gunfire shouting. Lyrics, Virella whispered, hope flaring. Ethan took the distraction and launched forward, ramming 2 soldiers aside and slamming into Harmon, just long enough to shout, Run! Virella bolted for the exit, then skidded to a stop. Ethan wasn't behind her. He was fighting 3 guards at once, giving her time. Without hesitation, she turned and fired, taking down the soldier lining up a shot on Ethan. I'm not leaving without you, she shouted. Just then, Lyrics and his team burst through the doors. Blasters roared, smoke filled the chamber. In the chaos, Virella grabbed Ethan, and together they sprinted for the exit. What about the others? She yelled. Safe. Escape ships prepped. We've got the data and destroyed the virus, Lyrics answered. But people are injured. We have to go now. 4 minutes to detonation, Ethan warned, checking his timer. They raced through collapsing hallways, but at the final corner, Harmon reappeared, flanked by elite guards. You're not going anywhere, he growled, gun aimed dead center. Virella glanced at her watch. 2 minutes. No time for a detour. Do you trust me? She asked Ethan softly. His answer was immediate. Yes. She took a deep breath, then hurled something small toward Harmon. Not a grenade. The detonator. Shoot it, Harmon shouted, too late. Virella hit the trigger. Override detonation, now! The world froze. Then came the roar. The satellite's core detonated prematurely. The blast shook the building to its bones. Debris rained from the ceiling. In the chaos, Lyrics and his team carved a path through the stunned soldiers. Virella pulled Ethan along as the group bolted for the evac ship. Guess our promise still holds, Ethan shouted over the chaos, that same strange smile flashing through the smoke. They reached the ship just as a second, earth-shaking explosion tore through the facility. Lyrics shoved them inside. Punch it, he yelled to the pilot. The ship launched skyward, breaking atmosphere. Through the window, they saw the Stellaris Research Center consumed in fire. Ashfall, Harmon, all of it, gone. Virella stood by the window, trembling, adrenaline crashing down hard. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Ethan. Their eyes met in a quiet, wordless moment. We did it, he said softly. She nodded. A small smile tugged at her lips. Well then, I guess you still owe me that story about Taryn. The refugee ship Aurora slipped past the last comm waves of Stellaris, gliding silently into deep space. Inside, medics rushed to treat the wounded from the raid. Laughter, relieved, exhausted, mingled with quiet sobs. They had succeeded, but not without sacrifice. In a quiet corner of the command deck, Virella stood in front of a large screen, watching the interstellar news broadcast. Footage of the Stellaris Weapons Research Center engulfed in flames played on a loop from every imaginable angle. Below it, a bold headline scrolled across the screen: "Mysterious explosion at Stellaris. Emergency Union Council convenes." "They still don't know exactly what happened," Ethan said from behind her, stepping into view with 2 steaming mugs in hand. Virella took one and blinked in surprise as the familiar, sweet aroma hit her. "Elari tea," she whispered. "Found it in the supply bay," Ethan said with a soft smile. Guess Lyrics thought of everything. They stood together, sipping in silence, watching as the news feed shifted to a live broadcast from the Union Council headquarters. The highest-ranking officials in the galaxy walked grim-faced into the emergency chamber. "The data we gathered was sent to the foremost neutral members of the Council," Ethan said. "They can't pretend not to know anymore." "You think they'll actually do something?" Virella asked. "Admit that part of their own government planned genocide?" "Not everyone's like Harmon," Ethan replied, eyes locked on the screen. "There are still people who want peace." The broadcast cut to a live correspondent outside the council chamber. "We're hearing reports that the council is now reviewing new evidence regarding a classified project named Ashfall. No official confirmation yet, but sources say the council president just stated, and I quote, 'If this is true, we will have to rewrite history.'" Virella raised an eyebrow. "Maybe you were right." Another urgent update interrupted the feed. Elari Refugee Camp 9 is being evacuated with Alliance peacekeepers on site. The Council cites a precautionary response to newly surfaced security risks. Virella's knees buckled slightly. "Taryn," she breathed. Ethan gently placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll find him. I promise." Just then, Lyrics entered, tired but resolute. "We're heading for Eden Station," he announced, "a neutral outpost right on the border between Alliance space and the Free Belt. From there, we can safely contact the remaining Elari refugee camps." "And after that?" Virella asked. Lyrics looked at her, then at Ethan. "Then we rebuild, not as enemies, not as victims, as survivors searching for a future." He handed her a small comm device. "This is a direct line to the missing persons network. They've already started the search for your brother." Virella clutched the device like it was made of starlight. Hope surged through her, dizzying in its intensity. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice cracking. Lyrics gave a solemn nod, then turned to Ethan. "You've proven you're not like the others, Ward, but the road ahead is still long." "I'm ready for it," Ethan replied without hesitation. When Lyrics left, Virella and Ethan stood together again, gazing out the wide viewport at the endless galaxy beyond. The stars shimmered like promises, distant, fragile, infinite. "Virella," Ethan said gently, "after everything we've been through, do you think you can trust a human?" Virella turned to him, and in the starlight, she saw not just the man who had saved her life, but the man who had stood beside her, fought beside her, risked everything for what was right. Slowly, she reached out and took his hand. "I don't trust humans," she said quietly, her eyes locked on his. "But I trust you." Ethan smiled, and in that moment, there was no war between them. No race, no history, no scars too deep to heal, just a beginning. Aurora continued its journey through the stars. On the screen, the feed shifted to distant shots of Elaria, the Elari homeworld still scarred, still healing. But this time, Alliance ships were landing, not to conquer, but to rebuild. A joint restoration project had just been approved by the Reform Council, a symbol of a new era. "You think we can really do it?" Virella asked, eyes on the image of her world. "Build a future where both our people can coexist?" Ethan followed her gaze, then looked back at her. I think we already proved one Elari and one human can change history. Virella smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in years. Then let's do it again. And as Aurora sailed on into deep space, Virella and Ethan stood side by side, two former enemies now united by hope. Ahead of them lay more than just the search for Taran. There was the work of building something better, a world where difference wasn't something to fear, but the foundation of something stronger. And this was only the beginning. Thank you for joining us on the journey of Virella and Ethan, two former enemies who became allies in the face of extinction. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Every week, we bring you new and powerful sci-fi stories where humanity rises to the occasion, even when the odds seem impossible. What kind of story would you like to hear next? Drop a comment below and let us know. We'll see you next week for a brand new adventure. Until then, stay brave, stay curious, and never stop believing in the extraordinary.